She was left at the altar because her love wasn't profitable enough. This isn't just a breakup story. This is a story of corporate warfare, ignited by a single brutal choice between a woman's heart and a billion-dollar empire. Have you ever been made to feel completely worthless? Discarded for someone with more money, more status, or more power? This is the story for you. You are about to meet Virginia Freeman, an abandoned bride whose world was shattered when the man she loved chose a richer woman to secure his fortune. But he made one critical mistake. He didn't just break her heart. He unleashed a force of nature. This is the unbelievable story of how she came back wealthier and more powerful than the very people who tried to erase her. But be warned, this is not a simple comeback story. This journey is filled with public humiliation, a ruthless corporate attack that will push her to the brink of ruin, and a shocking plot twist that will change everything you think you know about revenge, redemption, and true love. If you believe that the best revenge is massive success, comment "come back" down below right now. Show your respect for her journey by hitting that like button, and subscribe and turn on notifications, because you will not want to miss a single second of this unbelievable, life-changing drama. Let's get into it. The air in the chapel felt heavy, almost too thick to breathe, laced with the scent of white lily and shattered dreams. Virginia Freeman, a vision in silk and lace, felt every guest's pitying stare like a needle on her skin. This day, which was supposed to be the pinnacle of her love story, had abruptly turned into a spectacle of public humiliation. The silence that fell after the music stopped was, believe it or not, louder than any scream. Theodore's absence by her side was a void that echoed through her very soul, the beginning of a drama she never imagined she'd star in. In front of God and everyone, Theodore Wagner finally appeared, not to take her hand, but to shatter her heart into a million pieces. His words were cold, calculated, and devoid of any emotion save for a cutting ambition. He spoke of duty, of his family's legacy, and the need for a more profitable alliance. He was choosing a richer woman, an heiress whose dowry could save and expand his empire. The revelation was shocking, a cruel blow that redefined everything Virginia believed to be true about the man she loved, and their supposed true love. Every word he uttered was another nail in the coffin of the future they had planned. Virginia, the abandoned bride, just stood there, paralyzed, the bouquet trembling in her hands. The woman had chosen wasn't just rich, she was wealthier in status, in connections, in everything his world valued. To Theodore, this was a smart business move. To Virginia, it was the annihilation of her identity. She was no longer a bride, no longer the future Mrs. Wagner. In a flash, she became a cautionary tale, a story of being utterly humiliated. The cruelty of it all was almost surreal. He didn't show an ounce of remorse. His blue eyes, which once looked at her with adoration, now assessed her with the distance of a CEO analyzing a poor-performing asset. The coldness with which he discarded her was the most painful part, the poison that began to seep into her veins. That moment wasn't just the end of a romance, it was the start of a revenge story, though she didn't know it yet. What he saw as an ending, fate was secretly scripting as the prologue to her incredible comeback story. The humiliation was complete and absolute. He turned and walked away, leaving her at the altar like a sacrifice to his corporate gods. Her friends and family had witnessed her at her most vulnerable, a deeply emotional and devastating moment that would be forever seared into her memory. She could hear the whispers, feel the stares, and a fire began to burn beneath her icy pain. It was a faint flame, for sure, but it was there. The desire for redemption and to show the world and Theodore Wagner who she really was began to take root. What follows such a public fall from grace? For Virginia Freeman, the answer wasn't clear. But the seed of a life-changing transformation was planted on that desecrated altar. The pain of this day would become the fuel for a journey of overcoming that no one, especially Theodore, could ever predict. What he didn't get was that by abandoning her for a more powerful woman, had inadvertently set her on a path to become more powerful than either of them had ever dreamed. Their story was, well, a long way from over. In the quiet solitude that followed the storm, Virginia's mind drifted back to simpler times, a world away from this crushing new reality. She remembered late-night talks in their tiny apartment, fueled by cheap wine and big dreams. It was a time when their love story felt like the only thing that mattered, pure and untouchable. He used to say her laughter was the only currency he needed. What a joke that turned out to be. Their shared past now seemed like a beautifully crafted lie, a bittersweet memory that only served to deepen the unfolding drama of her life. She pictured Theodore Wagner as he was then a man whose ambition was matched only by his affection for her. Their romance wasn't built on wealth, but on mutual support and a belief in each other. He swore he loved her for her spirit, not her status. Now those vows were just echoes in an empty room. This painful recollection was a stark contrast to the headlines flashing across the gossip sites. The man who had cherished their humble beginnings was gone, replaced by a stranger she didn't recognize, one who had no problem leaving his bride behind. Meanwhile, the world saw a different Theodore. He was photographed on yachts, his arm draped around his new fiancée, a woman who was the very definition of a richer woman. They were the new power couple, their smiles as bright and hollow as the champagne glasses they constantly held. He was living a life of obscene luxury, a gilded cage he had chosen over their shared history and what she thought was true love. Every picture was a stab in her heart, a public declaration that his choice had been made, and she wasn't a part of it. What a shocking turn of events for the once-devoted lover. His new life was a performance, and he was playing the lead role with unnerving skill. The media fawned over the new couple, celebrating his shrewdness in securing a partner who was not only beautiful, but also incredibly wealthier than his last. He seemed to have no regrets, embracing the shallow glamour with an ease that made Virginia question if she ever knew him at all. It was clear that he had traded their authentic connection for a transactional relationship, one that benefited his bottom line. The man she loved was a ghost. The stark difference between their two worlds couldn't be more apparent. While she was picking up the pieces of her shattered life, he was attending galas and making headlines. This wasn't just a breakup, it was a complete erasure of their past. It was a painful, emotional lesson in the brutal realities of power and money. He had chosen a path of empty opulence, leaving her to navigate the wreckage alone. The injustice of it all was a bitter pill to swallow for the abandoned bride had created. Virginia couldn't help but wonder if any part of him missed what they had. Did he ever look at his powerful fiancée and see the ghost of the woman he once promised to love forever? Or was he so blinded by his ambition that their history had been completely wiped clean? This question haunted her waking moments, a painful reminder of his betrayal. But as the days turned into weeks, a new feeling began to bubble beneath the surface, a quiet, steely resolve for overcoming this devastating blow. The Wagner family matriarch, a woman with ice in her veins and a fortune to match, toasted her son's engagement at an exclusive family dinner. She praised Theodore's impeccable business acumen, framing his betrayal as a strategic masterpiece. In their eyes, leaving Virginia at the altar wasn't a heartless act, it was a necessary corporate merger. They spoke of the union with the richer woman as a brilliant move to secure their dynasty for generations. Virginia Freeman was nothing more than a footnote, a minor misstep now corrected. They laughed and chatted, their conversation dripping with disdain for the commoner who had almost infiltrated their ranks. To them, she was a nobody, a girl with no name, no money, and no influence. The fact that Theodore had once professed to love her was an embarrassing detail they were all too happy to forget. Their dismissal was absolute, reinforcing the vast, unbridgeable chasm between their world of inherited power and her own. Being humiliated by him was one thing, but being erased by his family was another level of pain. Theodore sat amongst them, accepting their praise with a practiced smile, though a flicker of discomfort occasionally crossed his face. He was the hero of their story, the son who had put family and fortune above foolish sentiment. His family's validation seemed to solidify his decision, drowning out the faint whispers of his conscience. They saw Virginia as a liability, and his new fiancée, the wealthier heiress, as their greatest asset. It was a cold, hard calculation, and in their world, the numbers were all that mattered in this twisted love story. This narrative, spun in the luxurious dining rooms of the Wagner estate, painted Virginia as a gold digger who had failed in her quest. They saw her love as a pathetic attempt to climb a social ladder she had no right to be on. The cruelty of their words, which they surely knew would get back to her, was intentional. It was a message: you are not one of us, and you never will be. The drama was not just personal, it was a brutal class war, and she had been soundly defeated. The gap between their worlds had never been more apparent. While Virginia was struggling with the emotional and financial fallout of the broken engagement, the Wagners were celebrating their increased net worth. They lived in a reality where people were disposable, where love was a commodity, and where a broken heart was simply collateral damage in the pursuit of becoming more powerful. Their callousness was a shocking revelation of the values that truly governed their lives, something Theodore now seemed to embrace fully. The family's public and private dismissal of Virginia added insult to injury, but it also did something unexpected. It ignited a fire in her. Being cast as a worthless commoner was the ultimate insult, but it also freed her from any lingering hope of reconciliation or understanding. They had drawn their line in the sand. Now she would draw hers. This wasn't just about Theodore anymore, it was about proving them all wrong. Her desire for redemption was no longer just a wish, it was becoming a plan. With her world in ashes, Virginia Freeman made a pivotal decision. Instead of drowning in her sorrow, she would build something from it. She took the small inheritance left by her grandmother, a modest sum that was worlds away from the Wagner fortune, and invested it all in herself. She opened a small design studio in a less glamorous part of the city. It wasn't much, but it was hers. This was the first step in her comeback story, a quiet act of defiance against a world that had written her off as nothing. She poured all of her pain, her anger, and her heartbreak into her work. Every design, every choice of fabric, every stitch was imbued with the raw emotion she was feeling. Her creations were not just beautiful, they were authentic, telling stories of resilience and vulnerability. The business became her sanctuary, the one place where the title of abandoned bride held no power. Here, she was a creator, a founder, an architect of her own destiny. This was her therapy, and it was the beginning of her revenge. Her style was a stark contrast to the sterile, corporate aesthetic of the big design houses, including the one owned by Theodore's new family. Virginia's work had soul. It was personal, relatable, and it began to attract a small but loyal following. People were drawn to the genuine passion behind her brand. She wasn't just selling designs, she was selling pieces of her story of overcoming adversity. Little by little, word began to spread about the brilliant new designer with a heartbreaking past. Theodore's world was one of mass-produced luxury and calculated trends. Virginia's was one of bespoke craftsmanship and emotional connection. While he was chasing market share, she was building a community. It was a slow, grueling process, filled with long nights and overwhelming self-doubt. But every small victory, every satisfied client, was a balm to her wounded spirit. She was slowly transforming her greatest pain into her greatest strength, a truly life-changing journey. She never spoke publicly about Theodore Wagner or the humiliation she endured. She let her work speak for her. The narrative of the jilted commoner was slowly being replaced by the story of a talented and determined entrepreneur. People were starting to see her not as a victim, but as a fighter. This quiet dignity was far more powerful than any angry outburst could ever be. She was rewriting her own story, one design at a time, turning a personal drama into a professional triumph. This small business was more than just a livelihood, it was her act of redemption. It was proof that her worth was not tied to a man or his family's name. She was building an empire of her own, not of money, but of integrity and creativity. And though she didn't know it yet, this small venture, born from the ashes of a failed romance, was about to put her on a collision course with the very people who had tried to destroy her. A surprise was waiting just around the corner. Life for Theodore Wagner was on the surface perfect. He had the money, the power, and the socially acceptable, richer woman by his side. Their marriage was more of a merger, a transactional affair that pleased their families and shareholders. Yet, in the quiet moments, a strange and unfamiliar feeling would creep in. He'd see a small article in a business journal or a mention on a design blog about Virginia Freeman's burgeoning company. Each mention of her success was a small pinprick to his conscience. His wife, whose name was Isabella, was sharp and cynical. She noticed his fleeting moments of distraction. One evening, she saw him staring at a picture of Virginia accepting a local design award. Still thinking about the little charity case? She sneered, her voice dripping with condescension. You'd think she'd have faded into obscurity by now. Her mockery was a constant reminder that he had chosen this life, this cold partnership, over something that had once been warm and real. The drama he thought had left behind was still simmering. Theodore would quickly dismiss it, of course, mumbling something about a passing curiosity. But he couldn't shake the feeling. It wasn't just regret, it was a strange mix of pride and unease. He saw in her success the same fire and determination he had once loved. He had told her she was nothing without him, a cruel lie meant to justify his actions. Now she was proving him wrong, and it was a shocking pill to swallow. His smart business decision suddenly felt a lot like a colossal, life-changing mistake. Isabella saw Virginia's modest success as an insult. The idea that the abandoned bride could not only survive but thrive was an affront to her sense of superiority. She's playing in the minor leagues, darling, she'd say, flipping through a magazine. Don't flatter yourself by thinking her little hobby is any threat to us. But her dismissiveness belied a growing insecurity. Why would her powerful husband still spare a thought for the woman had so publicly humiliated? Her jealousy was a poison in their already sterile marriage. Deep down, Theodore knew that Virginia's success was more authentic than anything he had achieved that year. His wins were corporate, calculated, and ultimately empty. Her success was built from scratch, fueled by a passion he had tried to extinguish. This growing realization was a silent torment. He had traded true love for a wealthier portfolio, and the dividends were feeling increasingly hollow. The ghost of his past was starting to feel more real than the polished life he was living. He kept these thoughts to himself, a secret rebellion in his gilded cage. He wondered what Virginia would think if she knew about his fleeting moments of remorse. Would she laugh? Would she feel a sense of victory? The pang of regret was a constant low-grade ache, a reminder of the man he used to be and the love story he had willingly destroyed. Her comeback story was just beginning, and for the first time, Theodore Wagner started to feel a genuine sense of fear. Virginia's reputation for integrity was becoming her most valuable asset. She was known for her fair pricing, her honest communication, and her unwavering commitment to quality. This reputation reached the ears of a disgruntled property developer, a man named Marcus Thorne. He had recently been a victim of a ruthless deal orchestrated by Wagner Industries, a deal that left him with subpar materials and a massive financial loss. He had been cheated, and he was looking for a designer he could trust for his next big project. He came to Virginia's small studio, initially skeptical. Had heard the rumors about her past connection to Theodore Wagner, but had also heard about her impeccable ethics. During their meeting, She spoke with a quiet confidence and a transparent honesty that was a breath of fresh air. She didn't just show him designs, she listened to his vision and his frustrations. He saw in her a partner, not an opportunist. It was a surprise to him that such integrity still existed in their cutthroat industry. Without knowing the full story, Thorne awarded her the contract for a new boutique hotel, a project that was significant enough to put her company on the map. He only mentioned that he was done with soulless corporate giants who cut corners, a veiled reference to his disastrous deal with Wagner Industries. Virginia had no idea that by winning this client, she was stepping directly into the ring with her past. Her journey of overcoming her personal history was about to become a professional battle. The project was a game-changer. It was the kind of contract that could elevate her from a niche designer to a major player. It was her chance to build something lasting and prove her worth on a much larger scale. The irony was thick. The fallout from Theodore's unethical business practices was now directly fueling his abandoned bride's rise. This was a plot twist that not even a novelist could have scripted. A perfect, albeit unintentional, first step in her unfolding revenge story. As she dove into the project, her focus was entirely on delivering a masterpiece for Marcus Thorne. She was unaware that news of the deal was sending quiet shockwaves through the industry. Theodore's company had been eyeing the same project, assuming their reputation and size would make them a shoo-in. When they lost it to a small, up-and-coming firm, they were stunned. When Theodore found out the name of that firm's founder, he was floored. The drama was about to escalate. Virginia was no longer just a ghost from his past, she was now a competitor. A small one, yes, but a competitor nonetheless, who had just poached a significant client right from under his nose. Her quiet, steady climb had suddenly become a direct threat to his world. The professional and the personal were about to collide in a spectacular fashion, setting the stage for a confrontation that would be far more emotional in public than either of them could imagine. Her path to redemption was leading her straight back to him. The annual industry gala was the perfect stage for Isabella Wagner's venom. She saw Virginia Freeman's name on the guest list and saw her chance. Threatened by the whispers of Virginia's growing success and Theodore's lingering glances at articles about her, Isabella decided to put the little commoner back in her place. As Virginia was accepting a minor Rising Star Award, Isabella took the microphone for an impromptu toast, her voice dripping with saccharine malice. This was a calculated move in a very public chess game. "Let's hear it for Virginia Freeman," Isabella began, a predatory smile on her face. "It's so inspiring to see someone build a career from the ashes of such a famously failed romance." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. It just goes to show that even a heartbreaking, public rejection can be a fantastic career move. Some women get a settlement, others, it seems, get a business plan. The insult was devastatingly precise, designed to remind everyone that Virginia was, first and foremost, the abandoned bride, forever humiliated. A collective gasp went through the crowd. All eyes were on Virginia, expecting her to crumble or retaliate. It was a moment of supreme cruelty, a public stripping of her professional accomplishments to reduce her to her most painful memory. Theodore, standing beside his wife, looked pale and horrified. He hadn't seen this coming, and he was frozen, a coward in the face of his wife's viciousness. The scene was intensely emotional, a public execution of Virginia's character orchestrated by the richer woman who had replaced her. But Virginia didn't crumble. She stood there, poised, and let the silence hang for a moment. Then, with a calm, unwavering grace, she smiled gently and approached the microphone. "Thank you, Isabella," she said, her voice clear and steady. "You are absolutely right. My journey was born from a difficult place, but I believe our greatest strength is often forged in our deepest pain." She looked out at the audience, her gaze connecting with many in the room. "And for that lesson, I will always be grateful." This was her comeback story in action. Her response was a masterclass in dignity. She didn't deny her past, she owned it and redefined it as a source of strength, not shame. She had taken Isabella's poison and turned it into medicine right in front of everyone. The room erupted in spontaneous, thunderous applause. In that moment, Isabella's attempt to make Virginia look small only made her look petty and cruel, while Virginia appeared more powerful than ever. The attack had backfired spectacularly. What would you have done in her shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Virginia walked off that stage with her head held high, having earned the respect of the entire industry. She had faced her tormentor and won, not by fighting back, but by rising above. The incident, meant to be her final humiliation, ironically became a pivotal life-changing moment that solidified her reputation as a force to be reckoned with. She was no longer just a rising star, she was a leader. The gala incident created a ripple effect no one could have anticipated. Impressed by her grace under fire, a titan of the tech industry, a reclusive billionaire named Julian Croft sought her out. He had been looking for a designer with not just talent, but also character, to helm the interior design of his new global headquarters. He saw in Virginia a resilience and integrity that was sorely lacking in the corporate world. He offered her the contract on the spot, a deal so massive it would instantly catapult her company into the major leagues. This wasn't just a big contract, it was a kingdom-making opportunity. The Julian Croft account was one of the most coveted in the world, a project that even Wagner Industries had been desperately trying to land. When the news broke, the business world was stunned. The story was no longer about a scorned woman's small success, it was about a brilliant new player making a power move. The narrative had shifted, and it was a shocking development for everyone, especially her rivals. Suddenly, Virginia Freeman was everywhere. Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, Business Weekly all wanted to tell her story. But now, they focused on her business acumen, her unique design philosophy, and her meteoric rise. The headlines no longer whispered about the abandoned bride, they screamed about the visionary CEO. She was becoming wealthier and more influential with each passing day. Her success a direct result of the character she had refused to compromise. This was the ultimate redemption. Theodore and Isabella could only watch in a mixture of disbelief and horror. Virginia was no longer a minor annoyance, she was a direct and formidable competitor. She was playing in their league now, and by all accounts, she was winning. Isabella's petty jealousy had backfired, inadvertently giving Virginia the platform she needed to secure a game-changing deal. It was a plot twist of epic proportions, a delicious irony that wasn't lost on the industry gossips. The hunter had become the hunted. Virginia, for her part, remained grounded and focused. The contract was a massive responsibility, and she poured all her energy into exceeding every expectation. She expanded her team, moved into a stunning new office, and managed her company's explosive growth with a steady hand. She was building an empire on her own terms, founded on the principles of authenticity and respect. Her comeback story was becoming a legend, inspiring countless others who had been told they weren't good enough. The world finally saw her for who she was, a brilliant and powerful force of nature. The shadow of Theodore Wagner was gone, completely eclipsed by the light of her own success. She was no longer defined by the man who had left her, but by the empire she was building. Her transformation was nearly complete. She had turned the worst day of her life into the foundation of a legacy, a testament to the incredible power of overcoming a past designed to break you. Isabella Wagner could not stand it. Virginia's triumph was a daily torment, a public symbol of her own failure to crush her rival. Consumed by a venomous jealousy, she decided that if she couldn't beat Virginia with words, she would destroy her with corporate warfare. She used her family's immense resources and underworld connections to orchestrate a ruthless attack. It began with a high-level corporate espionage plot, successfully stealing the master plans for Virginia's innovative design for the Julian Croft headquarters. It was a devastating blow. But she didn't stop there. The theft was just the beginning of her insidious plan. Isabella then leaked a doctored version of the plans to a competitor, making it look as if Virginia had sold them out. Simultaneously, she launched a vicious smear campaign, feeding false information to financial journalists. Stories began to surface that Virginia's company was fiscally unstable, that she had lied to her investors, and that her integrity was nothing more than a carefully crafted PR stunt. It was a brutal, multifaceted assault designed for maximum damage. The attack was swift and merciless. The stolen design was the heart of the Croft project, and its leak was a catastrophic breach of trust. The false media reports acted as the poison that infected her entire business. Julian Croft, though he respected Virginia, was forced to put the contract on hold, pending an investigation. Investors, spooked by the negative press, began to pull their funding. It was a perfect storm of betrayal and deceit, a shocking turn in this corporate drama. Virginia's dream was turning into a nightmare. Her company, once a symbol of her resilience, was now on the brink of bankruptcy. She was hemorrhaging money and support, her reputation in tatters. She was being attacked from all sides, and she had no idea who was behind it. The woman who had handled public humiliation with such grace was now facing the silent, invisible enemy that was dismantling her life's work, piece by piece. This was no longer a rivalry, it was an execution. Isabella watched from the shadows, reveling in the destruction. She had finally found a way to make Virginia suffer, to bring the powerful CEO crashing back down to earth. In her twisted mind, this was justice. This was the proper order of things, the richer woman asserting her dominance, proving that money and ruthlessness would always triumph over sentimental notions like integrity. She believed she was about to deliver the final killing blow to Virginia's comeback story. This was the ultimate betrayal, a devastating act of revenge from a woman she barely knew, all orchestrated out of spite. Virginia felt the walls closing in, the weight of the lies and the theft crushing her spirit. Everything she had worked for was about to be lost. It was a moment of profound despair, a false defeat so complete it seemed impossible to recover from. Describe this woman's actions in one word. Post it below. The emotional toll was immense, pushing her to her absolute limit. The media, which had so recently celebrated her as a visionary, turned on her with savage speed. The narrative of the inspiring underdog was replaced by the story of a fraudulent amateur who had flown too close to the sun. They dissected the leaked documents, published scathing opinion pieces, and painted her as a charlatan. The same journalists who had praised her integrity now questioned her every move. She was tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, the latest victim of a 24-hour news cycle that thrives on scandal. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The remaining investors who had once believed in her vision saw only risk. One by one, they called emergency meetings and invoked exit clauses, pulling their capital out of her company. Their belief in her evaporated overnight, replaced by the cold, hard fear of financial loss. The phones in her office rang incessantly with cancellations and demands for repayment. The empire she had built with her own two hands began to crumble around her, a devastating surprise. Virginia felt utterly alone. Friends in the industry suddenly stopped returning her calls, distancing themselves from the unfolding scandal. The respect she had earned at the gala now felt like a distant memory. She was once again an outcast, but this time it was worse. Before, she was a victim of a broken heart. Now, she was being branded as a failure and a fraud. The public that had championed her comeback story now reveled in her spectacular downfall. It was a brutal and humiliating reversal of fortune. She was facing total ruin. The company was bleeding money, the Croft project was indefinitely suspended, and her name was mud. Bankruptcy wasn't just a possibility, it was an imminent certainty. She stood to lose everything, the business that was her life's work, the financial security she had fought so hard for, and the reputation she had so carefully built. It was a life-changing nightmare from which she couldn't seem to wake up. The drama had reached its darkest and most emotional point. In the midst of this chaos, Virginia refused to be a passive victim. She spent sleepless nights poring over documents, trying to find the source of the leak, searching for any proof that could clear her name. But Isabella had covered her tracks masterfully. The evidence was circumstantial, the attacks untraceable to a single source. It seemed like a hopeless fight, a battle against shadows. The weight of overcoming this new insurmountable obstacle felt almost impossible to bear. Everything she had built from the ashes of her first heartbreak was about to be turned to ash once more. The pain was profound, a deep, soul-crushing despair that threatened to extinguish the fire within her for good. This was the ultimate test of her resilience. The world believed she was finished, a tragic character in a cautionary tale. What no one knew was that even in her darkest hour, Virginia Freeman was not yet ready to surrender. Her story was not over. Theodore Wagner had watched Virginia's fall from a distance, initially believing the media reports like everyone else. A part of him felt a smug sense of justification. Perhaps she wasn't the saint everyone made her out to be. But something didn't sit right. The attack was too vicious, too perfectly coordinated. It felt personal. His unease grew until he could no longer ignore it. He decided to confront Virginia himself, seeking some kind of truth or perhaps closure in the wreckage of her career. He found her in her nearly empty office, a place that was once buzzing with creative energy. She looked broken, exhausted, but as she looked up at him, her eyes held a defiant fire that he recognized all too well. She was a fighter. "If you've come to gloat, Theodore, please be quick about it," she said, her voice raspy with fatigue. "I have a company to save." Her strength, even in defeat, was a shocking reminder of the woman he had so foolishly let go. This was an emotional reunion. "I didn't come to gloat," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "I came because none of this makes sense." It was in that moment that Virginia made a choice. She could have thrown him out, but she saw a flicker of the man she once knew. She slid a single file across the desk. "You're right, it doesn't make sense," she said. "Unless you consider the source." Inside the file was a mountain of circumstantial evidence she had painstakingly gathered, all pointing in one undeniable direction toward his wife, Isabella. The proof was undeniable. Encrypted email trails from shell corporations, financial records of payments to disgraced journalists, a security expert's report tracing the data breach to a server with links to Isabella's family company. It was a web of deceit, spun with a level of malice that stunned him. He saw his wife's fingerprints all over this brutal act of revenge. He had been sleeping next to a monster, completely blind to her treachery. The plot twist hit him like a physical blow. He looked at Virginia, truly seeing the hell she had been put through. The public humiliation, the corporate sabotage, it was all an extension of the rivalry that had started with him. He was the cause of all of this. He had not only abandoned her for a richer woman, but he had abandoned her to a cruel, sociopathic enemy. The weight of his guilt was crushing, a sudden and horrifying realization of the consequences of his choices. He had chosen a lie over true love. A broken but defiant Virginia watched him process the information. She had not presented the proof to beg for his help, but to show him the truth. "She didn't just try to destroy my company, Theodore," Virginia said, her voice steady. "She tried to destroy me. Your wife." The words hung in the air between them, an indictment of everything his life had become. For Theodore, this was a moment of reckoning, a life-changing confrontation that would force him to choose, once and for all, what kind of man he was going to be. The drive back to his mansion was a blur. Theodore was consumed by a tidal wave of shock and remorse. Every cruel word from Isabella, every dismissive comment about Virginia, now played back in his mind with horrifying clarity. He realized with sickening certainty that he hadn't just made a bad decision, he had made a catastrophic one. He had traded a genuine, powerful love story for a hollow alliance with a woman who was not just cold, but truly evil. He had abandoned true love for a beautifully packaged lie. That night, he made a decision. He couldn't undo the past. He couldn't erase the pain he had caused Virginia when he left her, a humiliated bride, at the altar. But he could fight the present injustice. He owed her that much. Working from a secure, private office, he began to secretly use his own vast resources to counter his wife's sabotage. He was a powerful man, and for the first time in years, he was going to use that power for something other than his own gain. He hired a team of the best forensic accountants and cybersecurity experts in the world, people who could operate in the shadows. Their mission to find the irrefutable, hard evidence that would link Isabella directly to the corporate espionage and smear campaign. He moved to protect Virginia's remaining assets, using his own capital and a series of anonymous shell companies to buy up her company's debt, preventing hostile takeovers and giving her a financial lifeline she didn't even know she had. This was his secret act of redemption. He worked tirelessly, driven by a guilt that gnawed at him day and night. It was a dangerous game. If Isabella found out, the fallout would be immense, not just for his marriage but for the entire Wagner empire. But he didn't care. He was finally doing the right thing, fighting for the woman he had so wrongly discarded. This secret war was his penance, his attempt to correct a terrible wrong. The drama had taken a surprise turn. He never contacted Virginia to tell her what he was doing. He knew she wouldn't accept his help, and frankly, he didn't deserve her forgiveness. This wasn't about winning her back, it was about giving her a fighting chance to win back what was rightfully hers. He was dismantling his wife's attack from the inside out, using his knowledge of her operations against her. It was a quiet, methodical counter-assault, the beginning of his own journey of overcoming his moral failures. While Virginia continued her desperate public fight, unaware of the powerful, invisible ally she now had, Theodore gathered his weapons. The evidence his team was uncovering was more damning than he could have imagined. He was building a case so airtight, so explosive, that it would not only exonerate Virginia, but would also bring his wife's entire house of cards crashing down. The stage was being set for a final public confrontation. The annual Wagner Industries shareholder meeting was the most prestigious event on the corporate calendar. It was broadcast live, with the titans of industry and finance in attendance. Isabella sat in the front row, looking smug and triumphant, the very picture of a powerful and untouchable heiress. She believed she had won. She had no idea that she had walked into a trap, and that her husband was the one who had set it. This was a shocking gambit on Theodore's part. When Theodore took the stage, he didn't start with quarterly earnings. Instead, with a grave expression, he projected a document onto the massive screen behind him. "Before we discuss the future of this company," he began, his voice booming through the auditorium, "we must address a rot from within." He proceeded to lay out the entire scheme, presenting the irrefutable evidence his team had gathered: bank transfers, server logs, audio recordings of Isabella conspiring to steal Virginia's designs and plant false stories. The room was stunned into absolute silence. He publicly exposed his wife's fraud in excruciating detail. He showed how she had used company resources and illegal methods to sabotage a competitor, Virginia Freeman Designs, out of personal malice. He didn't spare himself either. "I stand before you today not just to expose this fraud, but to confess my own blindness," he declared, looking directly at the camera. "I chose this alliance for profit, and in my greed, I failed to see the character of the person I married." The drama was reaching its absolute peak. Then came the final blow. "Effective immediately, I have filed for divorce," Theodore announced. "And I will be recommending the board remove Isabella Wagner from her seat and launch a full investigation into her activities." Isabella's face was a mask of pure fury and disbelief. She was being publicly dethroned, her reputation shredded in front of the entire world by her own husband. The humiliated party in this story had just changed, and it was a stunning plot twist. He took full responsibility for the scandal, admitting his own moral failings had allowed this to happen. It was a stunning act of self-immolation and corporate suicide, but it was also an act of profound redemption. He was torching his own life to clear Virginia's name. The man who had once abandoned a bride at the altar for money was now sacrificing his own fortune and reputation for the sake of the truth. It was a life-changing moment of accountability. The fallout was immediate and explosive. The meeting ended in chaos, and the story became the biggest corporate scandal of the decade. Theodore Wagner had detonated a bomb in the middle of his own life, but in doing so, he had given Virginia the one thing she needed most: the truth, delivered on a global stage. His public confession was the first step in a long, painful journey to restore her name and perhaps to find his own soul again. In the aftermath of the bombshell meeting, Theodore didn't retreat. He went on the offensive not for himself, but for Virginia. He became the key witness in the ensuing legal battles, voluntarily testifying against his own wife and her family's company. In court, he laid out every detail of Isabella's scheme, his testimony providing the unshakable foundation for Virginia's case. He subjected himself to brutal cross-examinations, never flinching from his own culpability in the matter. It was a public act of penance. He worked with Virginia's legal team, giving them access to the extensive evidence his private investigators had gathered. This was the missing piece she needed, the hard proof that turned her case from a desperate fight into a certain victory. He helped her navigate the complex world of corporate litigation, using his insider knowledge to counter every move Isabella's high-priced lawyers made. His fight to restore her reputation was relentless, a full-time mission fueled by his profound remorse. Virginia watched this transformation with a mix of awe and confusion. This was not the cold, ruthless man who had shattered her heart. This was a man systematically dismantling his own world for her sake. It was an incredibly emotional experience to see him fighting for her so fiercely. While she could not yet find it in her heart to forgive him for his original betrayal, she couldn't deny the power of his actions now. His quest for redemption was as real as the damage he had once caused. Their combined efforts were unstoppable. With Theodore's testimony and evidence, Virginia won a massive lawsuit against Isabella and her company. The courts ordered them to pay her a settlement so large it not only saved her company, but made her independently wealthier than she had ever imagined. Julian Croft, seeing her name completely cleared, immediately reinstated the game-changing contract with a public apology and a bonus for her troubles. Her comeback story was finally complete. The legal victory restored her company and her financial stability, but Theodore's public campaign on her behalf did something more. It restored her name. He went on record with major news outlets, stating unequivocally that Virginia Freeman was a victim of a malicious plot and one of the most brilliant, ethical designers he had ever known. He used his tarnished but still powerful voice to rewrite the public narrative, ensuring the world saw her not as a scandal, but as a survivor. Through his actions, Theodore helped Virginia secure the justice she deserved. He had played a pivotal role in her ultimate victory, a strange and unexpected ally in her journey of overcoming adversity. The woman he had once dismissed as a worthless commoner had, with his help, defeated one of the most powerful families in the country. Their shared battle was over, but the complex, unresolved love story between them was about to enter its final, most unpredictable chapter. The Industry Summit was the largest in a decade, a gathering of the world's most influential creative and business minds. The final award of the night was the most prestigious, the Innovator of the Year. When the presenter announced the winner, the name that echoed through the grand hall was Virginia Freeman. The entire room rose to their feet in a thunderous standing ovation. It was a moment of absolute triumph, the final glittering confirmation of her incredible journey. As she walked to the stage, she was the embodiment of power and grace. Dressed in one of her own stunning designs, she radiated a confidence that was light years away from the broken bride she had once been. The award wasn't just for her designs, it was for her resilience, her integrity, and the life-changing impact she'd had on the industry. It was a testament to her victory over scandal and her refusal to be defeated. This was more than an award, it was a coronation. In that moment, her transformation was complete. Through her talent, her hard work, and the massive success of the Croft project, Virginia had become a titan. Financially, her company's valuation and her personal net worth had skyrocketed, making her significantly wealthier than Isabella Wagner. In terms of influence and respect, she was in a different stratosphere. She was now more powerful, more admired, and more celebrated than the richer woman who had once been the cause of her despair. From the stage, she looked out at the sea of faces, a mix of colleagues, competitors, and admirers. Her acceptance speech wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about the power of authenticity and the importance of building something meaningful, even from a place of pain. She spoke of overcoming challenges and turning scars into strengths. Her words were inspiring and deeply emotional, captivating the entire audience. It was a speech that would be quoted for years to come. This was the ultimate redemption. She hadn't just gotten her life back, she had built a new one, bigger and brighter than she had ever dreamed. Her comeback story was now the stuff of legend, a blueprint for anyone who had ever been knocked down. She had proven that true power isn't inherited or married into it, is earned through character and grit. The surprise wasn't that she had succeeded, but the magnificent scale of her victory. Like this video as a sign of respect for her incredible journey. She ended her speech with a simple thank you, her voice full of genuine gratitude. As she held the award, its weight felt real and earned. The applause washed over her, a wave of validation and respect. Virginia Freeman, the once abandoned bride, was now on top of the world, a self-made queen in an empire of her own making. The final chapter of her romance, however, was yet to be written. After the ceremony, as Virginia was quietly celebrating with her team, Theodore approached her. He wasn't the arrogant CEO she remembered, or even the determined ally from the court battles. He was stripped of all his former bravado, his expression humble and full of a profound, heartbreaking sorrow. He stood before her not as a powerful man, but simply as a man, flawed and broken, begging for a chance to speak. The final act of their long drama had arrived. "Virginia," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "I know I have no right, but I need to say it. The biggest mistake of my life wasn't a business decision, it was a human one. I abandoned my greatest treasure for a pile of gold. I abandoned you." His apology was raw and unfiltered, a confession that came from the depths of his soul. He admitted that his quest for redemption in the public eye meant nothing if he didn't have her forgiveness. It was a deeply emotional and vulnerable moment. He didn't make excuses. He owned every bit of his cruelty, from leaving her at the altar to his blindness regarding Isabella's nature. He confessed that watching her build her empire, seeing her grace and strength, had been both a torment and an inspiration. He admitted that the only deal he ever truly wanted was the one he broke with her. He had chased a wealthier future, only to realize the richest part of his life had been the love story he had had with her from the very beginning. Then, in a move that was both a shocking surprise and a beautiful culmination of their journey, he got down on one knee. He held out not a diamond, but a single simple key. "This isn't a proposal on my terms," he said, his eyes filled with tears. "It's a promise. A promise to spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. To build a future with you, however you want it to be. The key is to my heart, Virginia. It was always yours." It was a proposal stripped of all pretense. It wasn't about merging empires or gaining power. It was about true love. It was about a man who had lost everything to finally understand what truly mattered. He was offering her not a contract, but a surrender. The choice, the power, was entirely hers. This was the ultimate plot twist. The man who had abandoned her for power was now admitting that she was the ultimate power in his life. Virginia looked at the man before her, a man who had caused her the deepest pain and had then fought for her greatest victory. Her journey of overcoming was complete, her revenge and redemption achieved. Now she was faced with a new choice, not about business, but about her heart. The ending to their chaotic, painful, and epic romance was finally in her hands, proving that in the end, the most valuable asset of all isn't money or status, but a love that is strong enough to find its way back home. Virginia Freeman's story is a powerful reminder that our worth is never defined by who leaves us, but by what we build after they're gone. She proves that our deepest wounds can forge our strongest weapons, and true power is, and always will be, an inside job. If you also believe that integrity is a superpower, and that our comebacks are always stronger than our setbacks, then you've found your community. Subscribe to this channel and join a family that will always champion the underdog. Now we need your help to spread this message. First, hit the like button to help this story of resilience find someone who needs to see it today. Second, in the comments below, answer this question: what was the most powerful moment in her comeback story for you? And third, share this video with one person you know who is fighting their own battle. Let's create a chain of inspiration. And while you wait for our next upload, know that this channel is a vault of emotional and inspiring journeys just like this one. Explore our other videos and discover the incredible tales of revenge and redemption you might have missed. To make sure you never miss out on the next emotional roller coaster, activate that notification bell. You truly never know what unbelievable story is coming next, and you won't want to be left behind. Until next time, stay strong.